Today, I'm going to tell you two wild stories. The first story is about a little-known invasion of a South American country in 1949 that had absolutely insane unintended consequences. And the second story is about this very strange ritual that typically did not have horrible consequences, but one time in 1851 it did. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of true crime mystery stories, so please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our daily uploads. Okay, let's dive into today's stories. On the night of February 12th, 1949, the city of Quito, Ecuador, was calm. Families were gathered around radios. Music floated through the streets. Two beloved singers were performing live, and like most Saturday nights, people had paused their routines to listen. Then, the music stopped. A serious voice cut in. "This is an emergency broadcast. Ecuador is under attack." Within seconds, the mood across the city changed. The radio announced that the southern city of Latacunga had been destroyed. Then, another update followed. Enemy aircraft had landed just miles outside Quito. Panic spread faster than the words themselves. People poured into the streets. Some stared at the sky. Some began praying. Others ran home to gather supplies. For many, the fear felt real, because it had happened before. Only years earlier, Peru had invaded Ecuador during a border conflict. The memory was still fresh. Then the broadcast escalated. A man claiming to be a government official screamed that poison gas was being used. Homes were burning. The enemy was closing in. "They're coming." That was enough. Chaos exploded. Cars crashed in the streets. Families fled with suitcases. Women clutched their children. Some men began searching for weapons. Others ran to churches. Liquor bottles shattered in bars. The entire city unraveled in less than 30 minutes. And at the center of it all was a radio director named Leonardo Paez. Inside the radio station, Leonardo watched the madness unfold outside the windows. Smoke began rising, but not from an invading army. The crowd had turned on the station, because the invasion wasn't real. It was a dramatized radio play, an adaptation of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. Unlike the famous 1938 American version, this broadcast had not clearly warned listeners at the beginning that it was fiction. By the time the truth was revealed, the damage was already done. Furious citizens stormed the building. They set it on fire. Leonardo barely escaped, leaping from a window onto a nearby rooftop as flames consumed the station. That night, between 6 and 20 people lost their lives, some in the fire, others during the panic. All because of a story that sounded too real. Leonardo was never jailed, but his reputation was destroyed. He eventually left the country, and the station that once held the public's trust went silent for 2 years. It remains one of the most shocking examples of how powerful and dangerous mass media can be. January 26, 1851, Fall River, Massachusetts. A young man named Bailey Staples was smiling as he walked toward his third booking of the day. Bailey was a professional medium, someone who claimed to communicate with the dead. Whether people believed him or not didn't matter. His seances were popular entertainment. That night he arrived at the home of John Gardner. Guests were already waiting around a circular table in a dimly lit parlor. Bailey made a dramatic entrance. He instructed everyone to place their hands lightly on the table, forming a chain. He dimmed the lights and began calling out to spirits. The room fell silent. Then the table trembled. Guests gasped. What they didn't know was that Bailey had concealed metal hooks attached to his wrists under his sleeves. With subtle movements, he could lift and shake the table without appearing to touch it. It was a trick. But tonight, something felt different. As Bailey continued, witnesses later said his expression changed. He seemed uncomfortable, pale. His breathing grew heavy. Suddenly he stiffened. His eyes rolled back. He began mumbling incoherently. The table shook violently. Then Bailey collapsed onto the floor. At first, the guests were impressed. They thought it was part of the act. But Bailey didn't get up. A doctor was called. Within minutes, Bailey Staples was pronounced dead. Rumors spread instantly. Some believed a spirit had possessed him. Others claimed he was trapped in a supernatural trance. Crowds gathered, demanding that no autopsy be performed, fearing it would kill him if he were still spiritually suspended. Eventually, authorities allowed an examination. The truth was far less mystical. Bailey had an undiagnosed heart condition, performing 3 physically demanding seances in one day, lifting heavy tables using only wrist strength, had put enormous strain on his heart. During his final performance, a weakened artery ruptured. He had unknowingly pushed himself to death. Ironically, his most convincing seance was also his last, and for many people at the time, his death didn't disprove the supernatural. It convinced them it was real. So that was all for today. Let me know what you thought of today's stories in the comments. See you in the next story.